Week 13, Gay Liberation, 1960s through 1970s. I'm Katie.
And I am Kevin.
And I'm Tainor.
And my name is Ana Mora Camacho.
Before getting to the gay liberation movement of 1960 through 1970s, I wanted to start off with some early gay rights information. For instance, in the 1950s, also known as the homophile years, organizations demanded respect and equal rights for people regardless of gender identity or sexual orientation, and this emerged in the United States. Early groups used the term homophile, meaning loving the same, to describe themselves. The terms homosexual, homosexual woman, and sex variant were also used. Most activism remained at a local level in the 1950s and 1960s and focused on providing safe social environments, addressing workplace, housing discrimination, and encouraged medical, legal, and other professions to adopt a more sympathetic view of homosexuals. Also, during the 1950s was where one of the most important people, Harry Hay, developed the Mattachine Foundation, one of the nation's first gay rights group. The foundation was small and sought to improve the lives of gay men through discussion groups and related activities. The foundation also expanded after founding member Dale Jennings was arrested in 1952 for solicitation and then later set free due to a deadlocked jury. At the end of the year, Jennings formed another organization called One Incorporation, which welcomed women and published One, the country's first pro-gay magazine. Also during this time, the U.S. Post Office refused to deliver America's first widely distributed pro-gay publication, which was One, the homosexual magazine. And this case went to the U.S. Supreme Court, which for the first time in gay rights history was where the court ruled in favor of them. And although Jennings was ousted from One Incorporation in 1953 due to being part of a communist group, he and Harry Hay were also kicked out from the Mattachine Foundation due to their communism, but the magazine still continued. The Mattachine Foundation members restructured the organization to form the Mattachine Society, which had local chapters in other parts of the country, and in 1955 began publishing the country's second gay publication, the Mattachine Review. These early years of gay rights movement also faced some notable setbacks. For instance, the American Psychiatric Association listed homosexuality as a form of mental disorder in 1952. In the following year, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed an executive order that banned gay people, or more specifically, people guilty of sexual perversion, from federal jobs. This ban would remain in effect for 20 years. Now, getting into the gay liberation movement of 1960s through 1970s, this era urged lesbians and gay men to engage in radical direct action and to counter societal shame with gay pride. The movement involved lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and even in the transgender community. This happened throughout the whole world in North America, South America, Western Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. In this period, annual political marches through major cities, usually held in June to commemorate the Stonewall Uprising, which we'll get into later, were still known as gay liberation marches, but they're later to be called Gay Pride Parade. Gay liberation is also known for its links to the counterculture at the time, to groups like Radical Fairies and for the gay liberationists. But gay liberation refers more broadly to the movement to freeing the gay men and lesbians, LGBTQ groups from social and legal oppression. By the late 1960s, gay and lesbian subcultures and communities had grown in many of the nation's cities, complete with the bars, cabarets, magazines, and even restaurants. In the early 1960s, New York, under the Wagner administration, was beset with harassment against the gay community, particularly by the NYPD. Homosexuals were seen as a subject of a drive to rid the city of undesirables. The New York State Liquor Authority did not allow homosexuals to be served in licensed bars in the state under penalty of revocation of the bar's license to operate. A legal study commissioned by Mattachine, New York, on the city's alcohol beverage law concluded that there was no law prohibiting homosexuals gathering in bars, but did prohibit disorderly behavior in bars, which the SLA had been interpreting as homosexual behavior. In 1966, members of the Mattachine Society in New York staged a sit-in, a twist on the sit-in protest of 1960s, in which they visited taverns, declared themselves gay, and waited to be turned away so they could sue. They were denied service at the Greenwich Village Tavern Julius, resulting in much publicity and the quick reversal of the anti-gay liquor laws. Dick Litch, one of the members of Mattachine Society, who we'll get into later as well, states during this time, "We are homosexuals. We believe that a place of public accommodation has an obligation to serve an orderly person and that we are entitled to service so as long as we are orderly." The results of their sippin', the New Jersey State Supreme Court ruled that well-behaved homosexuals could not be denied service. They stated, "In our culture, homosexuals are indeed unfortunates," the ruling added, "but their status does not make them criminals or outlaws," thus resulted to gays being served in bars again.
We will now discuss the Black Cat Tavern riot. On the night of New Year's Day, 1967, several plainclothes LAPD officers infiltrated the Black Cat Tavern, an LGBT bar located on West Sunset Boulevard in the District of Los Angeles, California. It was one of the first riots in United States history protesting police harassment of LGBT people. The police used deliberate and excessive force during the raid to carry out explicitly homophobic state legislation that prevented queer folks from 1. Kissing and or engaging in any sexual acts, and 2. Wearing clothing that did not match their socially prescribed gender role. According to Tangents, a local gay newspaper, the Black Cat was happy and hooping before undercover police arrived and started beating patrons as they were ringing in the new year.
The Sexual Revolution. The Sexual Revolution was a time where typical gender roles were rejected. This was a time period of sexual liberation in the 1960s. This sexual movement challenged individuals to think outside of the usual. Form of birth controls came out on the market, and this revolution encouraged women to be more dominant in their bodies, whether choosing to use birth control and understanding that it is okay to have sex without procreation. Sexual freedom was embraced throughout the gay community. As for women, it helped them modernize to society by taking birth control and prevent an unwanted pregnancy or marriage. This challenged traditional relationships in the United States and focused more on accepting sexual relationships outside of heterosexuality and marriage. This movement encouraged sex, nudity, contraception, and homosexuality. Sexual expression became the norm. As you can see on the poster on the right, it shows a woman letting men know that she is on the pill and that it is okay. Vanguard, 1965-1967. Vanguard was one of the first LGBT organizations founded in San Francisco, California on 1965. It was an organization and youth movement led by Adrian Raveroer to educate individuals on the importance of being able to express their gay pride. He showed them that it is okay to be gay and that homosexuality is okay. His message to the people was to promote a gay right and to change the way that people viewed gays. Vanguard was a group that symbolized equality, acceptance, and it wanted to end discrimination. This group, the youth, was taught to demonstrate for equality, to become more self-motivated towards their goals, and believe that it is okay to be gay. As you can see on the picture on the right, a man holds a poster saying Gay Pride. This was a march, letting them know that they are not afraid to show who they are and it is okay. GLF, Gay Liberation Front. The Gay Liberation Fronts were formed June of 1969 in New York, quickly spreading to places like Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. The Gay Liberation Fronts were groups of protesters advocating gay liberation that wanted to end discrimination against gays, lesbians, and sexism. They wanted to encourage other people to come out of the closet and to be seen as normal and not as different. These gay pride marches promoted human rights to end the violence towards gays. They marched for liberation to ensure their rights for the gay community because they were seen as objectionable and were deprived of employment. They partnered with groups like the Black Panthers, anti-war activists, and women liberationists. The GLF helped transform society and encourage homosexuals to be more prideful. On the right, we can see how there's so many marches. Even today, they have marched for gay rights. This decade consisted of many marches, such as the Compton riots. In 1966, the first LGBT-related riot began in San Francisco known as the Compton Cafeteria Riots. The Compton Cafeteria Riots was owned by a cafe by Gene Compton, where transgender people were able to hang out and congregate. Transgenders were not welcome in gay bars or other places due to transphobia. Here, they were welcome. They were able to hang out. Back then, cross-dressing was illegal and gave police an excuse to raid the Compton cafeteria and close it down. There was a lot of police brutality, and the transgender community had enough of it. 1966, the night started with a transgender woman throwing coffee at a cop's face. The rumble began, tearing down the Compton cafeteria. After that, transgender people were banned from the Compton cafeteria. The Compton riots had an impact on the community. Although it didn't stop police brutality, it did increase it. The riots, it did decrease it. The riots encouraged the LGBT community to join and together fight for equal rights and resist against police brutality against the transgender community. The Compton cafeteria riots were a path to equal rights for the transgenders and gay community. On the right, you could see a picture of the Gene Compton cafeteria and a woman with her sign saying, "Drag it out into the open." The 1970s, a year to make a difference. In this decade, many groups and gay alliances organizations were formed. Various U.S. states repealed sexual restrictive laws like anti-sodomy, sexual misconduct. Pretty much being gay or having a gay sex was a crime. June 28, 1970 was the first anniversary of the Stonewall March, where it began in New York as well as the Gay Pride March. Harvey Milk became the first openly gay man in the 1977 to run for office in California. 1978, in San Francisco, the first gay pride flag was flown to symbolize the civil rights movement for the LGBT community. 1979, the White Night Riots began, and after the assassination of openly gay San Francisco Mayor George Moscone and Harvey Milk, it all began. On the right, you could see the image of "No Apologies." That was an image for the White Nights riots. There is also an image of Harvey Milk.
On this slide, I will be talking about the White Night Riots. On May 21st, 1979, thousands of members of San Francisco, predominantly gay Castro District community, took to the streets to protest the lenient sentence received by Dan White for the murder of local politician and gay rights activist Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone. Harvey Milk rose to prominence as a gay rights activist and became the first openly gay person elected to the public office in the state of California, where he was elected to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in 1977. He was murdered, as well as Mayor Moscone. It devastated San Francisco's LGBT community and the city. More than 1,500 people protested. A lot of protesters were injured by police brutality. 20,000 San Franciscans gathered to remember Harvey, and 75,000 people marched for gay rights in Washington, D.C. On this slide, I will be talking about the Stonewall Riots of 1969. In the early hours of June 28, 1969, the New York City police raided Stonewall Inn, a gay club in Greenwich Village in New York City. The raid caused a riot among bar patrons and neighborhood residents as police hauled employees of the gay bar out. Reasons for this was due to finding bootleg alcohol and finding people and employees violating the state of New York gender-appropriate clothing statute. This led to 6 days of protests and violent situations with law enforcement outside the bar on Christopher Street, in neighborhood streets, and by Christopher Park. This didn't start the gay rights movement, but this was a galvanizing force for the LGBT political activism. In 2016, President Barack Obama designated the site of these riots at the Stonewall Inn, Christopher Park, and the surrounding sidewalks as a national monument, and recognition of the areas contributed to the gay and human rights.
The Radical Fairies were a loosely affiliated worldwide network, majority of them gay men, whose goal is to redefine the meaning of gay identity and reject hetero imitation. Many members also participate in counterculture movements. Co-founder Harry Hay started the movement back in 1978 to connect to the ancient spirit of gay people throughout history. However, Hay did not fully believe in referring to it as a movement because he saw it as a way of life. Through this, Hay was able to grab the attention of gay men from all around and inspire them mind and spirit. He filled a void in the gay society and gave them a voice and sense of direction, inspiring other gay men from around the world to join the cause. Now we will discuss the Equal Rights Amendment. The Equal Rights Amendment is a proposed amendment to the United States Constitution that was created for the sake of guaranteeing equal rights for all citizens, regardless of sex. It was meant to end the legal distinctions between men and women in terms of property, employment, divorce, or etc. It was originally written by Crystal Eastman and Alice Paul before finally being introduced to Congress in 1921. Many middle-class women were in support of the Equal Rights Amendment, while those women in working class were often against it due to the fact that employed women needed special protections when it came to employment hours and working conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, now introducing Harry Hay. Henry Hay Jr., also known as Harry Hay, was a prominent American gay rights activist, communist, labor advocate, and Native American civil rights campaigner. He was a founder of the Mattachine Society, the first sustained gay rights group in the United States, as well as the Radical Fairies, a loosely affiliated gay spiritual movement. From an early age, he acknowledged his same-sex sexual attraction and came under the influence of Marxism. Briefly studying at the Stanford University, he subsequently became a professional actor in Los Angeles, where he joined the Communist Party USA, becoming a committed activist in left-wing labor and anti-racist campaigns. Hay has been described not only as the father of modern gay movement, but also as a father of gay liberation, and has been the subject of a biography and a documentary film. Dick Leash was an American LGBT rights activist and president of the Mattachine Society back in 1960s. Despite growing up in a Catholic family, he was accepted by his kin as an openly gay man. He orchestrated and led the Sip-In at a New York bar, where he and other gay rights supporters went into the bar, stated that they were gay, ordered drinks, and waited to be served with the intentions to sue had the bar refused to give them drinks. This was one of the first acts of gay civil disobedience recorded in the U.S. where LGBT activists attempted to gain the right to drink in bars.
On this slide, I will be talking about Cecil Williams, the pastor. Cecil always had a view of not discriminating against a person's sex or race in any way. His church in San Francisco is the largest social service provider that feeds 3,500 people a day. His church also sponsors computer training for adults, runs programs for HIV and domestic violence, and treats substance abusers. In 1964, he helped create the Council on Religion and Homosexuality, a bold move even by today's standards. His church is open to jazz music, gays, hippies, addicts, the poor, poets, and anyone else that wanted to go. A famous quote he had said was, "I went to every bar and flop joint I could and said, I'm asking you to give yourself the opportunity to see why you belong on earth. No one else ever said that to them. You belong here." On this slide, I will be talking about Huey Newton. Huey Newton is the founder of the Black Panther Party, which is an African-American left-wing organization working for the rights of self-defense for African Americans in the U.S. On August 15, 1970, Newton delivered a speech in New York titled "A Letter to the Revolutionary Brothers and Sisters" about the women's liberation and gay liberation movements. After a year of the Stonewall riots, he addressed his point of his speech on trying to get people to see that women and the LGBT are our allies, and that we need as many allies as possible. On this slide, I will be talking about the Lavender Menace. The Lavender Menace is associated with the LGBT, coined by the National Organization for Women, leader Betty Friedman. Lavender Menace was one of the groups created as a backlash to the exclusion of lesbians. Members involved in this group were part of the Gay Liberation Front and a National Organization for Women. This group had disrupted the 1970 Second Congress to unite women, which made Congress exclude any lesbian rights issued from the agenda. Lights were cut off at the conference and shirts with Lavender Menace were introduced. This was a manifesto that they had called the Unidentified Women.